Hey, what is up YouTube? It's Lauren here, and I'm here with another great video for you guys today. Today I've got another Magnus Chase audiobook. We've got chapter 14. Chapter 14 through, what is it, mathematically? Chapter 14 through 19. Got a lot of chapters to do today. We are going to get them all done because I want to get this book done pretty fast so I can start working on the next two that I've got. And then I've also got one that I've had set to the side forever now that I definitely need to get on that one as well. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and do this. And, I apologize for my hair again. I apologize for the room. It's a mess. It's a mess. Got a lot of stuff going on in my life. So, anyways, we are on chapter 14, like I said. It's called 4 Million Channels, and there's still nothing on except Valkyrie Vision. Let's go ahead and begin. Hooray for going last. I was relieved when the presentation started with Einar Haar at the other end of the table, until I saw what the other newbies had done to get into Valhalla. Helgi called, "Lars Alstrom!" A heavy-set blonde guy rose with his Valkyrie. Lars was so nervous he knocked over his goblet, splashing magic mead all over his crotch. A wave of laughter rippled through the hall. Helgi smiled. As many of you know, Captain Ganella has been phasing in new equipment over the past few months. She's been fitting her Valkyrie's armor with cameras to keep everyone accountable, and, hopefully, to keep us entertained. The warriors cheered and banged their mugs, drowning out the sound of Sam cursing next to me. Helgi raised his goblet. I present to you Valkyrie Vision. Around the tree trunk, a ring of giant holographic screens flickered to life, floating in midair. The video was choppy, apparently taken from a camera on the shoulder of a Valkyrie. We were high in the sky, circling over the scene of a sinking ferry in a gray sea. Half the lifeboats dangled sideways from their cables. Passengers jumped overboard, some without life vests. The Valkyrie swooped in closer. The video's focus sharpened. Lars Alstrom scrambled along the tilting deck, a fire extinguisher in his hands. The door to the inside lounge was blocked by a large metal container. Lars struggled to move it, but it was too heavy. Inside the lounge, a dozen people were trapped, banging desperately on the windows. Lars shouted something to them in Swedish? Norwegian? The meaning was clear. Get back! As soon as they did, Lars smashed the extinguisher against the window. On the third try, it shattered. Despite the cold, Lars stripped off his coat and laid it across the broken glass. He stayed at the window until the last passengers were safely out. They ran for the lifeboats. Lars picked up the fire extinguisher again and started to follow, but the ship lurched violently. His head slammed into the wall and he slid down unconscious. His body began to glow. The Valkyrie's arm appeared in the frame, reaching out. A shimmering golden apparition rose from Lars' body. His soul, I guessed. Golden Lars took the Valkyrie's hand, and the video screens went dark. All around the feast hall, warriors cheered. At the head table, the Thanes debated among themselves. I was close enough to hear some of it. One guy, Lord Nelson, questioned whether a fire extinguisher could count as a weapon. I leaned towards Sam. Why does that matter? She tore her bread into smaller and smaller pieces. To get into Valhalla, a warrior must die in battle with a weapon in his or her hand. That's the only way. So, I whispered, anyone could get into Valhalla if they just grabbed a sword and died. She snorted. Of course not. We can't have kids taking up weapons and dying on purpose. There's nothing heroic about suicide. The sacrifice, the bravery has to be unplanned. A genuine heroic response to a crisis. It has to come from the heart, without any thought of reward. So, what if the Thanes decided that a newbie shouldn't have been picked? Does he go back to being alive? I tried not to sound too hopeful. Sam wouldn't meet my eyes. Once you're an Einherji, there's no going back. You might get the worst work assignments. You might have a hard time earning respect, but you stay in Valhalla. If the Thanes rule the death unworthy, well, the Valkyrie takes the punishment for that. Oh. Suddenly I understood why all the Valkyries at our table looked a little tense. The Thanes took a vote among themselves. They agreed unanimously that the fire extinguisher could count as a weapon, and Lars' death could be seen as in combat. "What greater enemy is there than the sea?" said Helgi. "We find Lars Alstrom worthy of Valhalla." More applause. Lars almost fainted. His Valkyrie held him up while smiling and waving at the crowd. When the noise died down, Helgi continued. "Lars Alstrom, do you know your parentage?" The newcomer's voice cracked. "I never knew my father." Helgi nodded. "That is not uncommon. We will seek wisdom from the runes, unless the All-Father wishes to intercede." Everyone turned towards the unoccupied throne. The ravens ruffled their feathers and squawked. The throne remained empty. Helgi didn't look surprised, but his shoulders slumped with disappointment. He motioned toward the fire pit. From a cluster of servers and cooks, a lady in a green hooded robe shuffled forward. Her face was hidden in the shadows of her cowl, but judging from her stooped posture and her gnarled hands, she must have been ancient. I murmured to Sam, "Who's the wicked witch?" "Avala, a seer. She can cast spells, read the future, and other stuff." The Vala approached our table. She stopped in front of Lars Alstrom and pulled a leather pouch from the folds of her robe. She plucked out a handful of rune stones like the ones in Uncle Randolph's study. "And the runes?" I whispered to Sam. "What are they for?" "They're the old Viking alphabet," she said, "but each letter also symbolizes something powerful. A god, a type of magic, a force of nature. They're like the genetic code of the universe. The Vala can read the stones to see your fate. The greatest sorcerers, like Odin, don't even need to use the stones. They can manipulate reality simply by speaking the name of a rune." I made a mental note to avoid Odin. I didn't need my reality manipulated any farther. In front of our table, the Vala muttered something under her breath. She cast the stones at her feet. They landed on the dirt floor, some face up, some face down. One rune in particular seemed to catch everyone's attention. The holographic screens projected its image to everyone in the hall. The mark meant nothing to me, but hundreds of warriors shouted with approval. "Thor!" they cried. Then they started to chant, "Thor! Thor! Thor!" Sam grunted, "As if we need another child of Thor." "Why? What's wrong with them?" "Nothing. They're great. Gunilla over there, she's a daughter of Thor." "Oh." The Valkyrie captain was smiling, which was even scarier than her scowl. As the chanting subsided, the Vala raised her withered arms. "Lars, son of Thor, rejoice! The runes say you shall fight well at Ragnarok, and tomorrow, in your first combat, you shall prove your valor and be decapitated." The audience cheered and laughed. Lars suddenly looked very pale. That just made the warriors laugh harder, as if decapitation were a hazing ritual no worse than a wedgie. The Vala gathered her runes and retreated while Lars's Valkyrie helped him back into the seat. The ceremony continued. Next up was a newcomer named Didi. She'd saved a bunch of kids at her village school when the warlord's soldiers had tried to kidnap them. She'd flirted with one of the soldiers, tricked him into letting her hold his assault rifle, then turned it on the warlord's men. She was killed, but her selfless act gave the other kids time to get away. The video was pretty violent. The Vikings loved it. Didi got a standing ovation. The Vala read the runes. She confirmed that Didi's parents were regular mortals, but nobody seemed to mind that. According to Didi's fortune, she would fight valiantly at Ragnarok. Over the next week, she would lose her arms several times in combat. Within 100 years, she would rise to the Thane's table. "Ooh," the crowd murmured appreciatively. The other four newcomers were equally impressive. They'd all saved people. They'd sacrificed their lives bravely. Two were mortals, and one was a son of Odin, which caused a minor commotion. Sam leaned toward me. Like I said, Odin has not been seen in quite a while. We welcome any sign that he still moves among mortals. The last newcomer was the daughter of Heimdall. I wasn't sure who that was, but the Vikings seemed impressed. My head was swimming from too much information. My senses were on fire from too much mead. I didn't even realize we'd reached the end of the table until Helgi called my name. "Magnus Chase," he bellowed. "Rise and impress us with your courage." Chapter 15. My blooper video goes viral. My courage impressed no one. I squirmed in my seat as the video played. The Einarhar watched the screens in shocked silence. Then the mumbling and grumbling began, punctuated by bursts of incredulous laughter. Valkyrie vision showed only portions of what had happened. Saw myself on the bridge, facing Surt as he summoned a fiery tornado. The camera zoomed in on me, threatening him with my corroded piece of metal. Then Hearth and Blitz appeared. Blitz hit the black one with his make way for ducklings sign. Hearth's squeaky toy arrow hit me in the butt. Surt punched me. Surt kicked me in the ribs. I puked and squirmed in agony. The video fast-forwarded to me backing up against the bridge railing. Surt threw his fiery asphalt cannonball. I swung my sword and missed. In the feast hall, thousands of warriors grunted, "Ooh!" as a chunk of pavement hit me in the gut. Surt charged, and we both went over the side, grappling as we fell. Just before we hit the water, the video froze and zoomed in. The sword was now sticking out of Surt's gut, but my hands weren't on the grip. They were wrapped around Surt's big neck. An uncomfortable murmur spread through the room. "No," I said. "No, that's not how... Someone edited that. It's like a blooper reel." Sam's face had turned to stone. At the Thane's table, Captain Ganilla smirked. Her cameras, I realized. Her editing. For some reason, Ganilla wanted to disgrace Sam by making me look like an idiot, which, granted, wasn't a difficult task. Helgi set down his goblet. "Samira, Alabas?" "Explain." Sam touched the edge of her scarf. I had a feeling she wanted to pull it over her head and hope the room disappeared. I couldn't blame her. "Magnus Chase died bravely," she said. "He stood alone against Surt." More uneasy murmuring. One of the Thanes stood. "You say that was Surt, a fire Jotun, certainly, but if you're suggesting that it was the Lord of Muspelheim himself..." "I know what I saw," Eric Bloodaxe. "This one," Sam gestured at me like I was a prize specimen, "saved many lives on that bridge. The video does not show the whole story. Magnus Chase acted like a hero, and he deserves to be among the fallen." Another Thane rose. "He didn't actually die with the sword in his hand." "Lord Otter," Sam's voice sounded strained. "The Thanes have looked past such a technicality before. Whether or not Magnus gripped the sword at the moment of death, he died bravely in combat. That is the spirit of Odin's law." Lord Otter sniffed. "Thank you, Samira Alabas, daughter of Loki, for teaching us the spirit of Odin's law." The tension level in the hall went up about 30 notches. Sam's hand drifted toward her axe. I doubted anyone but me could see how her fingers twitched. "Loki. I knew that name. Norse mythology's big villain, born of giants. He was the archenemy of the gods. If Sam was his daughter, why was she here? How would she become a Valkyrie?" I happened to meet Ganilla's eyes. The captain was obviously loving this drama. She could barely suppress a smile. She was Thor's kid. That explained why she hated Sam. In the old stories, Thor and Loki were always trying to melt each other's faces. The Thanes debated among themselves. Finally, Helgi, the manager, spoke. "Samira, we're not seeing any heroism in this boy's death. We see a dwarf and an elf with toy weapons." "A dwarf and an elf?" I asked, but Helgi ignored me. "We see a fire Jotun who fell off a bridge and took the boy with him. That's an unusual situation, a son of Muspel crossing into Midgard, but it has happened before." "Shoot," muttered a Thane with bushy sideburns. "I should have seen the big old fire Jotun Santa Anna had with him at the Alamo. I tell you." "Yes, thank you, Lord Crockett." Helgi cleared his throat. "As I was saying, we see very little evidence that Magnus Chase was a worthy choice for Valhalla." "My lords," Sam spoke slowly and carefully like she was addressing children, "the video is not accurate." Helgi laughed. "Are you suggesting we shouldn't trust our own eyes?" "I'm suggesting that you hear the story from my point of view. It has always been our tradition to tell of the story of the hero's deeds." Ganilla stood. "Pardon me, my lords, but Samira is correct. Perhaps we should let the daughter of Loki speak." The crowd booed and hissed. Some called, "No! No!" Helgi gestured for silence. "Ganilla, you do your sisterhood credit by defending a fellow Valkyrie, but Loki has always been a master of smooth, honeyed words. Personally, I would rather trust what I see than have it spun for me in some clever explanation." Warriors applauded. Ganilla shrugged like, "Oh well, I tried," and sank back into her chair. "Magnus Chase, Helgi called. Do you know your parentage? I counted to 5. My first inclination was to yell, "No, but your dad was apparently a jackass." I don't know my father, I admitted, but look about that video. Perhaps you have potential we do not recognize, Helgi said. Perhaps you are a son of Odin or Thor or some other noble war god, and your presence brings us honor. We will seek wisdom from the runes unless the All-Father would intercede. He glanced at the throne, which remained empty. The raven studied me with dark, hungry eyes. Very well, Helgi said. Bring forth the Vala and... Between the roots of the tree where the waterfall hit the dark lake, a massive bubble erupted. Bloop. On the surface of the water stood 3 women shrouded in white. Except for the crackle of cooking fire and the sound of the waterfall, the hall was silent. Thousands of warriors watched, frozen in amazement, as the 3 white women glided across the floor, heading toward me. Sam? I whispered. Sam, what's going on? Her hand fell from her axe. The Norns, she said. The Norns themselves have come to read your fate. Chapter 16. Norns. Why did it have to be the Norns? I really wish someone had warned me I was going to die. Like, hey, you're diving off a bridge tomorrow and becoming an undead Viking, so go read up in Valhalla. I felt seriously unprepared. I remembered hearing about Norns, the ladies who controlled mortal destinies, but I didn't know their names or their motivation or the proper etiquette for meeting them. Was I supposed to bow, offer them gifts, run away screaming? Next to me, Sam muttered, "This is bad. The Norns only show up in extreme cases." I didn't want to be an extreme case. I wanted to be an easy case. Hey, good job, you're a hero. Have a cookie. Or even better, oops, this was all a mistake. You can go back to your regularly scheduled life. Not that my regularly scheduled life was so great, but it beat getting judged unworthy by 12 bearded guys named Eric. As the Norns got closer, I realized how big they were. At least 9 feet tall each. Under their hoods, their faces were beautiful but unnerving. Blank white, even their eyes. Trailing behind them came a sheet of fog like a bridal train. They stopped 20 feet in front of my table and turned up their palms. Their skin was like sculpted snow. Magnus Chase. I couldn't tell which Norn had spoken. The soft, disembodied voice resonated through the hall, seeping into my head, turning my skull into an icebox. Harbinger of the Wolf. The crowd stirred uneasily. I'd seen the word harbinger somewhere before, maybe in a fantasy novel, but I couldn't remember what it meant. I didn't like the sound of it. I liked the sound of wolf even less. I just about decided that running away screaming was my smartest option. Then in the hands of the middle Norn, fog collected, solidifying into half a dozen runestones. She threw them into the air. They floated above her, each rune expanding into a luminous white symbol as big as a poster board. I couldn't read runes, but I recognized the one in the center. It was the same symbol I'd picked from the pouch in Uncle Randolph's office. "Fehu," announced the cold voice. The rune of Frey. Thousands of warriors shifted in their seats, clinking restlessly in their armor. Frey? Who is Frey? My mind felt coated with frost. My thoughts were sluggish. The Norns spoke together, 3 ghostly voices chanting in unison, shaking leaves from the giant tree. Wrongly chosen, wrongly slain, a hero Valhalla cannot contain. 9 days hence, the sun must go east, ere sword of summer unbinds the beast. The glowing runes dissolved. The 3 Norns bowed to me. They melted into the fog and disappeared. I glanced at Sam. How often does that happen? She looked like she'd been smacked between the eyes with one of Gnilla's hammers. No, choosing you couldn't have been a mistake. I was told. I was promised. Someone told you to pick me up? Instead of answering, she murmured under her breath, as if running calculations for a rocket that had gone off course. At the Thane's table, the lords conferred. All around the hall, thousands of Einarhar studied me. My stomach folded into various origami shapes. Finally, Helgi faced me. Magnus Chase, son of Frey, your destiny is troubling. The lords of Valhalla must think on this further. For the time being, you shall be welcomed as a comrade. You are one of the Einarhar now. That cannot be reversed, even if it was a mistake. He scowled at Sam. Samira Alabas, the Norns themselves have pronounced your judgment in error. Do you have any defense? Sam's eyes widened as if she just realized something. The son of Frey. She looked around the room desperately. Einarhar, don't you see? This is the son of Frey. Cert himself was on that bridge. That means the sword. She turned to the Thane's table. Ganilla, you must see what that means. We have to find that sword. A quest immediately. Helgi banged his fist on the table. Enough! Samira, you stand in judgment for a grave mistake. It is not your place to tell us what to do. It is definitely not your place to order a quest. I did not make a mistake, Sam said. I did as I was ordered. Ordered? Helgi narrowed his eyes. Ordered by whom? Sam's mouth shut. She seemed to deflate. Helgi nodded grimly. I see. Captain Ganilla, before I announce the Thane's judgment on this Valkyrie, do you wish to speak? Ganilla stirred. The gleam in her eyes was gone. She looked like someone who'd gotten in line for the merry-go-round and unexpectedly found herself trapped on a roller coaster. She shook her head. No, my lord. I have nothing to add. Very well, said Helgi. Samir Alabas, for your poor judgment with this Einherji Magnus Chase and for your past mistakes, the Thanes rule that you be expelled from the Sisterhood of Valkyries. You are hereby stripped of your powers and privileges. Return to Midgard in disgrace. Sam grabbed my arm. Magnus, listen to me. You have to find the sword. You have to stop them. Like a camera flash, a burst of light, and Sam was gone. Her half-eaten meal and the breadcrumbs around her seat were the only signs she'd ever existed. So concludes our feast, Helgi announced. I will see you all tomorrow on the field of battle. Sleep well and dream of glorious death. Chapter 17. I did not ask for biceps. I didn't sleep much. I definitely didn't dream of glorious death. Been there, done that, got the afterlife. While I was at dinner, my sofa had been put back and repaired. I sat on it and thumbed through my old children's book of Norse mythology. But it didn't have much about Frey. One tiny picture showed a blonde guy in a tunic, frolicking in the woods, a blonde lady at his side, a couple of cats playing at their feet. Frey was the god of spring and summer, read the caption. He was the god of wealth, abundance, and fertility. His twin sister, Freya, the goddess of love, was very pretty. She had cats. I tossed the book aside. Great. My dad was a D-list god who frolicked in the woods. He was probably eliminated early last season on Dancing with the Asgardians. Did it crush me to learn this? Not really. You might not believe it, but my dad's identity has never been a big deal to me. It wasn't like I ever felt incomplete. Like, if only I knew my dad, my life would make sense. I knew who I was. I was Natalie Chase's son. As for life making sense, I had seen too much weirdness to expect that. Still, I had a lot of items on my I don't get it list. At the very top, how could a homeless kid have a dad who is the god of abundance and wealth? Talk about a cruel joke. Also, why would I get targeted by a big bad dude like Cert? He was the Lord of Muspelheim, High King Roasty Toasty. Shouldn't he pick on more interesting heroes like the Children of Thor? At least their dad had a movie franchise. Frey didn't even have his own cats. He had to borrow his sister's. And the Sword of Summer, assuming that was the blade I had pulled from the Charles River, how had it ended up there? Why was it so important? Uncle Randolph had been searching for it for years. Sam's last words to me were about finding the sword again. If it had belonged to my dad, and my dad was an immortal god, why had he allowed his weapon to sit at the bottom of a river for 1,000 years? I stared at the empty fireplace. The Norn's words kept playing in my head, though I wanted to forget them. Harbinger of the Wolf. I remembered what a harbinger was now. Something that signaled the arrival of a powerful force, like a doorman announcing the president or a red sky before a hurricane. I did not want to be the harbinger of the wolf. I'd seen enough wolves to last me an eternal lifetime. I wanted to be the harbinger of ice cream or falafel. Wrongly chosen, wrongly slain. A little late to announce that now. I was a frickin' Einerhergy. My name was on the door. I had a key to the minibar. A hero Valhalla cannot contain. I liked this line better. Maybe it meant that I could bust out of here, or I guessed it could mean that the Thanes would vaporize me in a burst of light or feed me to their magical goat. 9 days hence the sun must go east. Ere sort of summer unbinds the beast. Those lines bothered me the most. Last I checked, the sun moved east to west. And who is the beast? I was betting a wolf because it's always a stinkin' wolf. The sword was supposed to let loose a wolf. The sword should have stayed lost. Some memory nagged at me. A bound wolf. I stared at the children's book of mythology, half tempted to pick it up again, but I was already unsettled enough. Magnus Chase, listen to me, Sam had said. You have to find the sword. You have to stop them. I felt bad about Samira Alabas. I was still miffed at her for bringing me here, especially if it had been a mistake, but didn't want to see her kicked out of the Valkyries because some doctored video made me look like a doofus. Okay, more of a doofus than usual. I decided I should sleep. I didn't feel tired, but if I stayed awake thinking any longer, my brain would overheat. I tried the bed. Too soft. I ended up in the atrium, sprawled on the grass, gazing at the stars through the tree branches. Some point, I must have fallen asleep. A sharp sound startled me awake. A branch cracking. Someone cursed. Above me, the sky was turning gray in the pre-dawn light. A few leaves helicoptered through the air. Branches bobbed as if something heavy had just scrambled through them. I lay still, listening, watching. Nothing. Had I imagined that voice? Over in the foyer, a piece of paper slid under my doorway. I sat up groggily. Maybe the management was giving me the bill and letting me check out. I staggered toward the door. My hand trembled as I picked up the paper, but it wasn't a bill. It was a handwritten note in really nice cursive. Hi, neighbor. Join us in Lounge 19 for breakfast. Down the hall to the left. Bring your weapons and armor. TJ. TJ. Thomas Jefferson Jr., the guy across the hall. After the fiasco last night, I didn't know why he'd want to invite me to breakfast. I also didn't understand why I needed weapons and armor. Maybe Viking bagels fought back? I was tempted to barricade my door and hide in my room. Perhaps everyone would leave me alone. Maybe once all the warriors were busy with their Bikram yoga to the death, I could sneak out and find an exit to Boston. On the other hand, I wanted answers. I couldn't shake the idea that if this was a place for the brave dead, my mom might be here somewhere. Or someone might know which afterlife she had gone to. At least this guy TJ seemed friendly. I could hang out with him for a while and see what he could tell me. I trudged to the bathroom. I was afraid the toilet would be some Viking death machine with axe blades and a flush-operated crossbow, but it worked like a normal one. It definitely wasn't any scarier than the public restrooms in the common. The medicine cabinet was stocked with all my usual toiletries, or at least the toiletries I used to like when I had a home. In the shower, I tried to remember the last time I'd had a leisurely hot shower. Sure, I'd arrived in Valhalla feeling magically dry cleaned, but after a bad night's sleep in the atrium, I was ready for a good old-fashioned scrub down. I peeled off my layers of shirts and almost screamed. What was wrong with my chest? Why did my arms look that way? What were those weird, bulgy areas? Usually, I avoided looking at my reflection. I wasn't somebody I wanted to see on a regular basis, but now I faced the mirror. My hair was the same, a bit less grimy and tangled, but still hanging to my jawline in a curtain of dirty blonde, parted in the middle. You look like Kurt Cobain, my mom used to tease me. I loved Kurt Cobain, except for the fact that he died. Well, guess what, Mom? I thought. I have that in common with him now, too. My eyes were gray, more like my cousin Annabeth's than my mom's. They had a haunted, scary emptiness to them, but that was normal. The look had served me well in the streets. My upper body, however, I hardly recognized. Ever since my bad asthma days when I was little, I'd always been on the scrawny side. Even with all the hiking and camping, I'd had a concave chest, sticking out ribs, and skin so pale you could trace the road map of blue veins. Now, those strange new bulgy areas looked suspiciously like muscles. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't as dramatic as turning into Captain America. I was still lean and pale, but my arms had definition. My chest didn't look like it would collapse in the next strong wind. My skin was smoother, less translucent. All the rashes and nicks and bites that came from living on the street had disappeared. Even the scar on my left palm where I'd cut myself on a hunting knife at age 10 had vanished. I remembered how strong I'd felt when I first arrived at Valhalla, how I'd tossed my sofa across the room last night. I hadn't really stopped to think about it. What had hunting called Valhalla? An upgrade? I made a fist. I'm not sure what came over me. I guess when I realized that even my body wasn't my own, the anger, fear, and uncertainty of the last 24 hours reached critical mass. I'd been plucked out of my life. I'd been threatened, humiliated, and forcibly upgraded. I hadn't asked for a suite. I hadn't asked for biceps. I hit the wall, literally. My fist went straight through the tile, the drywall, and a 2x4 stud. I pulled out my hand, wriggled my fingers. Nothing felt broken. I regarded the fish-shaped hole I'd made above the towel bar. Yep, I grumbled. Housekeeping loves me. The shower helped calm me down. Afterward, wrapped in a fluffy HV embroidered bathrobe. Sorry. Shows what my mind is. I'm joking. I padded to the closet to search for clothes. Inside were 3 sets of blue jeans, 3 green t-shirts, all marked property of Hotel Valhalla, underwear, socks, a pair of good running shoes, and a sheathed sword. Leaning against the ironing board was the circular green shield with the golden rune of Frey painted in the middle. Okay then, I guess I knew what I was wearing today. I spent 10 minutes trying to figure out how to position the sword's sheath on my belt. I was left-handed. Did that mean the sword went on the right? Were left-handed swords different from right-handed ones? I attempted to draw the blade and just about ripped my pants off. Oh yeah, I was going to be a hit on the battlefield. I practiced swinging the sword. I wondered if it would start humming and guiding my hand, the way the sword on the bridge had done when I faced Sir. But no. This blade seemed to be a regular piece of non-humming metal with no cruise control feature. I managed to sheath it without losing any fingers. Slung the shield across my back, the way the warriors at dinner last night had been wearing theirs. The strap dug into my neck and made me want to gag. I looked in the mirror again. You, sir, I muttered, look like a huge dork. Bless me, by the way. My reflection did not argue. I went out to find breakfast and kill it with my sword. Chapter 18. I do mighty combat with eggs. There he is. TJ rose and grabbed my hand. Sit. Join us. You made quite a first impression last night. He was dressed the same as yesterday, a blue wool army jacket over a green hotel t-shirt, jeans, and leather boots. With him sat the half-troll X, the redhead Mallory Keene, and the guy I guess was half-born Gunderson, who looked like Robinson Crusoe on steroids. His shirt was a patchwork of animal pelts. His hide pants were in tatters. Even by Viking standards, his beard was wild, decorated with most of a cheese omelet. My 4 hallmates made room for me at the table, which felt pretty good. Compared to the main feast hall, Lounge 19 was downright intimate. Scattered across the room were a dozen tables, most unoccupied. In one corner, a fireplace crackled in front of a beat-up sofa. Along the other wall, a buffet table was laden with every kind of breakfast food imaginable, and a few kinds I had never imagined. TJ and company had parked themselves in front of a big picture window overlooking a vast field of ice and swirling snow. It made no sense, considering that it was summer in the atrium right down the hall, but I'd already learned that the hotel's geography was whack. That's Niflheim, TJ explained, the realm of ice. The view changes daily, cycling through the 9 worlds. The 9 worlds. I stared at my scrambled eggs, wondering which solar system they'd come from. I keep hearing about 9 worlds. Hard to believe. Mallory Keene blew powdered sugar off her donut. Believe it, newbie. I've visited 6 of them so far. 5 here, Halfborn grinned, showing me the rest of his cheese omelet. Of course, Midgard hardly counts. That's the human world. Then the Alfheim, Nidavellir, Jotunheim, Disney World, X said. Mallory sighed. With her red hair, green eyes, and powdered sugar around her mouth, she reminded me of a reverse color scheme Joker. For the last time, you numbskull, Disney World is not one of the 9. Why is it called a world then? X nodded smugly. The argument won and went back to his meal, sucking meat from the shell of a large crustacean. TJ pushed his empty plate away. Magnus, I don't know if it helps, but the 9 worlds aren't really separate planets. They're more like different dimensions, different layers of reality, all connected by the world tree. Thanks, I said. That's much more confusing. He laughed. Yeah, I guess it is. The world tree is the tree in the feast hall. Nah, Mallory said. The world tree is much bigger. You'll see sooner or later. That sounded ominous. Tried to concentrate on my food, but it was difficult with X right next to me demolishing a slimy mutant crab. I pointed at TJ's jacket. That's a Civil War uniform. Private in the 54th Massachusetts, my friend. I'm a Boston boy, same as you. Just got here a little earlier. Did the calculations. You died in battle 150 years ago? TJ beamed. The assault on Fort Wagner, South Carolina. My dad was Tyr, god of courage, law, and trial by combat. My mom was a runaway slave. Tried to fit that into my new worldview. A teenager from the 1860s, the son of a former slave and a Norse god, who was now having breakfast with me in an extra-dimensional hotel. X belched, which put things in perspective. Gods of Asgard, Mallory complained. That smell. Sorry, X grunted. Is your name really X? I asked. No, my name is... The half-troll said something that started with K, with KS, and went on for about 30 seconds. Half-born wiped his hands on his pelt shirt. You see? Nobody can pronounce that. We call him X. X, agreed X. He's another one of Sam Alabas's acquisitions, TJ said. X stumbled across a dogfight, one of those illegal ones, and... Where? Chicago? Chicago, affirmed X. He saw what was going on and went nuts. Started smashing up the place, walloping the betters, freeing the animals. Dogs should fight for themselves, X said, not for greedy humans. They should be wild and free. They should not be kept in cages. Didn't want to argue with the big guy, but I wasn't sure I liked the idea of wild dogs fighting for themselves. Now that sounded a lot like wolves, an animal I refused to harbinge. Anyway, TJ said, it turned into a full-scale battle. X against a bunch of gangsters with automatic weapons. They finally killed them, but X took down a lot of scumbags and freed a lot of dogs. That was what, a month ago? X grunted and continued sucking his shellfish. TJ spread his hands. Samira judged him worthy and brought him here. She got some flack for that decision. Mallory snorted. That's putting it mildly. A troll in Valhalla. Who could possibly object? Half troll, X corrected. That is my better half, Mallory keened. She didn't mean anything, X, TJ said. It's just that prejudice dies hard. When I got here in 1863, I wasn't exactly welcomed with open arms, either. Mallory rolled her eyes. Then you won them over with your dazzling personality. I swear, you lot are giving the Floor 19 a bad name. And now we have Magnus. Half-born leaned toward me. Don't mind Mallory. She's a sweetheart once you get past the fact that she's a horrible person. Shut up, Half-born. The big guy chuckled. She's just grumpy because she died trying to disarm a car bomb with her face. Mallory's ears turned as red as her hummingbird juice. It wasn't... Argh! Magnus, don't worry about that mess last night, continued Half-born. Folks will forget about it in a few decades. Believe me, I have seen it all. I died during the Viking invasion of East Anglia. Fought under the banner of Ivar the Boneless. I took 20 arrows in the chest protecting my thane. Ouch, I said. Half-born shrugged. I've been here for... going on 1,200 years now. I stared at him. Despite his bulk and his beard, Half-born looked maybe 18 tops. How do you stand it without going crazy? And why do they call you Half-born? His smile faded. Second question first. When I was born, I was so big, strong, and ugly that my mother said I looked like I'd been half-born, half carved from rock. The name stuck. And you're still ugly, Mallory muttered. As for how to avoid going crazy here, some do lose it, Magnus. Waiting for Ragnarok is hard. The trick is to keep busy. There's plenty to do here. Me, I've learned A dozen languages, including English. I earned a doctorate in Germanic literature, and I learned to knit. TJ nodded. That's why I invited you to breakfast, Magnus. To learn knitting? To keep active. Spending too much time alone in your room can be dangerous. If you isolate yourself, you start to fade. Some of the old timers. He cleared his throat. It doesn't matter. You're here. Just keep showing up every morning until doomsday and you'll be fine. I stared out the window at the swirling snow. Thought about Sam's warning to find the sword, the Norns chanting that something bad would happen in 9 days. You said you visited the other worlds. That means you can leave the hotel. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Yes, Halfborn said, but our main job is to wait for Ragnarok. Train, train, train. I rode the train at Disney World, said X. Maybe he meant it as a jest. The half-troll seemed to have two facial expressions. Wet cement and dry cement. Occasionally, said TJ, Einarhar are sent into the 9 worlds on missions. Tracking down monsters, Mallory offered, killing giants who crossed into Midgard, stopping witches and whites, and of course dealing with rogues. Whites? Rogues? I asked. Point is, said Halfborn, we only leave Valhalla under orders from Odin or the Thanes. But hypothetically, I said, I could go back to Earth, Midgard, whatever. Hypothetically, yes, TJ said. Look, I know that business with the Norns must be driving you bonkers, but we don't know what the prophecy means. Give the Thanes some time to decide what to do. You can't rush off and do something stupid. Gods forbid, said Mallory. We never do anything stupid, like that late-night pizza run to Centarpios. That never happened. Shut up, woman, Halfborn growled. Woman? Mallory reached for the knife at her belt. Watch your words, you overgrown Swedish hamster. Hold on, I said. You guys know how to sneak out of... TJ coughed loudly. Sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm sure you weren't asking about anything against the rules. Magnus, first of all, if you return to Midgard so soon, how would you explain it to those who knew you? Everyone thinks you're dead. Usually, if we go back, we wait until everyone we knew is dead. It's easier all the way around. Besides, it takes a while, sometimes years, for your Einherji strength to develop fully. Try to imagine waiting here for years. Didn't have many friends or relatives to go back to. Still, I didn't want to be stuck here learning new languages, knitting sweaters for ages. After seeing my cousin Annabeth, I kind of wanted to reconnect with her before she died. And if Samira was right about my mom not being in Valhalla, I wanted to find her wherever she was. But it's possible to leave without permission, I persisted. Maybe not forever, just for a while. TJ shifted uncomfortably. Valhalla has doors into every world. The hotel is designed that way. Most exits are guarded, but, well, are a lot of ways to Boston, since Boston is the center of Midgard. I glanced around the table. Nobody was laughing. It is? Sure, TJ said. It's right at the trunk of the world tree, the easiest spot from which to access the other worlds. Why do you think Boston is called the hub of the universe? Wishful thinking? No, mortals have always known that there was something about that location, even if they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. The Vikings searched for the center of the world for years. They knew the entrance to Asgard was in the west. That's one reason they kept exploring into North America. When they met the Native Americans, we called them the Skraelings, Halfborn said, vicious fighters. I liked them. The natives had all sorts of stories about how strong the spirit world was in this area. Later, when the Puritans settled, well, John Winthrop's vision of a shining city on a hill, that wasn't just a metaphor. He had a vision of Asgard, a glimpse into the other worlds. In the Salem witch trials, hysteria caused by magic seeping into Midgard. Edgar Allan Poe was born in Boston. It's no accident that his most famous poem was about a raven, one of Odin's most sacred animals. Enough, Mallory gave me a disgusted look. TJ will take forever when answering a yes or no question. The answer is yes, Magnus. It is possible to leave with or without permission. X cracked a crab claw. You would not be immortal. Yeah, TJ said. That's the second big problem. Valhalla, you cannot die. Not permanently. You'll just keep getting resurrected. It's part of the training. Remember the guy who had gotten impaled in the lobby and dragged off by wolves? Hunting had said he would be fine again by dinner. But outside of Valhalla? Out in the 9 worlds, TJ said, you're still a Einherji. You're faster and stronger and tougher than any regular mortal, but if you die out there, you stay dead. Your soul might go to Helheim, or you might simply dissolve into the primordial void. Get in, good yap. Hard to know. It's not worth the risk. Unless, Halfborn picked some egg out of his beard, unless he really did find the sword of Frey and the legends are true. It's Magnus's first day, TJ said. Let's not get into that. It's already freaked out enough. Freak me out more, I said. What legends exactly? In the hallway, a horn blasted. At the other tables, Einarhar just started to get up and clear their plates. Halfborn rubbed his hands eagerly. Talking will have to wait. It's battle time. Battle time, X agreed. TJ grimaced. Magnus, we should probably warn you about the first day initiation. Don't be discouraged if... Oh, shush, said Mallory. Don't spoil the surprise. She gave me a powdered sugar smile. Can't wait to see the new boy get dismembered. Chapter 19. Do not call me Beantown. Like, ever. I told my new friends I was allergic to dismemberment. They just laughed and herded me toward the combat arena. This is why I don't like making new friends. The battlefield was so huge I couldn't process what I was seeing. Back in the good old days when I was a street kid, I used to sleep on rooftops in the summertime. I could see the entire cityscape of Boston from Fenway Park to Bunker Hill. Valhalla's battlefield was bigger than that. It offered maybe 3 square miles of interesting places to die, all contained within the hotel like an interior courtyard. On all 4 sides arose the walls of the buildings, cliffs of white marble and gold-railed balconies, some hung with banners, some decorated with shields, some fitted with catapults. The upper floor seemed to dissolve in the hazy glow of the sky, as blank white as a fluorescent light. In the center of the field loomed a few craggy hills. Clumps of forest marbled the landscape. The outer rim was mostly rolling pastures with a river as wide as the Charles snaking through. Several villages dotted the river bank, maybe for those who preferred their warfare urban. From hundreds of doors in the walls around the field, battalions of warriors went streaming in, their weapons and armor glinting in the harsh light. Some Einarhar wore full plate mail like medieval knights. Others wore chainmail shirts, breeches, and combat boots. A few sported camo fatigues and AK-47s. One guy wore nothing but a Speedo. He'd painted himself blue and was armed only with a baseball bat. Across his chest were the words, "Come at me, bro." I feel underdressed, I said. X cracked his knuckles. Armor does not make victory. Neither do weapons. Easy for him to say. He was larger than some sovereign nations. Halfborn Gunderson was also taking the minimalist approach. He'd stripped down to nothing but his leggings, though he did sport a pair of vicious-looking double-bladed axes. Standing next to anyone else, Halfborn would have looked massive. Next to X, he looked like a toddler, with a beard, abs, and axes. TJ fastened his bayonet to his rifle. Magnus, if you want more than the basic equipment, you'll have to capture it or trade for it. The hotel armories will take red gold, or they work on a barter system. Is that how you got your rifle? No, this is the weapon I died with. I hardly ever fire it. Bullets don't have much effect on Einarhar. Those guys out there with the assault rifles, that's all flash and noise. They're the least dangerous people on the field. But this bayonet, it's bone steel, a gift from my father. Bone steel works just fine. Bone steel. Yeah, you'll learn. My sword hand was already sweating. My shield felt much too flimsy. So which groups are we fighting against? Halfborn clapped me on the back. All of them. Vikings fight in small groups, my friend. We are your shield brothers. And shield sister, Mallory said, though some of us are shield idiots. Halfborn ignored her. Stick with us, Magnus, and, well, you won't do fine. You'll get killed quickly, but stick with us anyway. We'll wade into battle and slaughter as many as possible. That's your plan? Halfborn tilted his head. Why would I have a plan? Oh, sometimes we do, said TJ. Wednesdays are siege warfare. That's more complicated. Thursdays, they bring out the dragons. Mallory drew her sword and serrated dagger. Today is free-for-all combat. I love Tuesdays. From 1,000 different balconies, horns blasted. The Einarhar charged into battle. Till that morning, I'd never understood the term bloodbath. Within a few minutes, we were literally slipping in the stuff. We just stepped onto the field when an axe flew out of nowhere and stuck into my shield, the blade going right through the wood above my arm. Mallory yelled and threw her knife, which sank into the axe thrower's chest. He fell to his knees, laughing. Good one! Then he collapsed, dead. Halfborn waded through enemies, his axes whirling, chopping off heads and limbs until he looked like he'd been playing paintball with only red paint. It was disgusting and horrifying. The disturbing part? The Einarhar treated it like a game. They killed with glee. They died as if someone had just taken down their avatar in Call of Duty. Never liked that game. Ah, that sucks, one guy muttered as he studied the 4 arrows in his chest. Another yelled, I'll get you tomorrow, Trixie, before falling sideways, a spear stuck through his gut. TJ sang the battle hymn of the Republic while he stabbed and parried with his bayonet. X smashed through one group after another. A dozen arrows now stuck out of his back like porcupine quills. But they didn't seem to bother him. Every time his fist connected, an Einherjar turned two-dimensional. As for me, I shuffled along in abject terror, my shield raised, my sword dragging. I've been told that death here wasn't permanent, but I had a hard time believing it. A bunch of warriors with sharp, pointy objects were trying to kill me. Didn't want to be killed. I managed to parry his sword strike, deflected a spear with my shield. I had a clear opening to stab one girl whose guard was down, but I just couldn't make myself do it. That was a mistake. Her axe bit into my thigh. Pain flared all the way up to my neck. Mallory cut the girl down. Come on, Chase, keep moving. You'll get used to the pain after a while. Great, I grimaced. Something to look forward to. TJ jabbed his bayonet through the faceplate of a medieval knight. Let's take that hill. He pointed to a nearby ridge at the edge of the woods. Why? I yelled. Because it's a hill. He loves taking hills, Mallory grumbled. It's a Civil War thing. We waded through the battle, heading for the high ground. My thigh still hurt, but the bleeding had stopped. Was that normal? TJ raised his rifle. He yelled, "Charge!" just as a javelin ran him through from behind. TJ! I yelled. He caught my eye, managed a weak smile, then face-planted in the mud. For frig's sake, Mallory cursed. Come on, newbie. She grabbed my arm and pulled me along. More javelins sailed over my head. You guys do this every day? I demanded. No, like we told you, Thursdays are dragons. But, hey, Beantown, the whole point is to get used to the horrors of battle. You think this is bad? Wait until we actually have to fight at Ragnarok. Why am I Beantown? TJ's from Boston. Why isn't he Beantown? Because TJ is slightly less annoying. We reached the edge of the woods. X and Halfborn guarded our backs, slowing down the pursuing horde. And the enemies were a horde now. All the scattered groups within sight had stopped fighting one another and were after us. Some pointed at me, some called my name, and not in a friendly way. Yeah, they've spotted you, Mallory sighed. When I said I wanted to see you eviscerated, I didn't mean I wanted to be standing next to you. Oh well. I almost asked why everyone was after me, but I got it. I was a newbie. Of course the other Einherjar would gang up on me and the other newcomers. Lars Ulstrom was probably already decapitated. Dee Dee might be running around with her arms cut off. The veteran Einherjar would make this as painful and terrifying for us as possible to see how we handled ourselves. That made me angry. We climbed the hill, weaving from tree to tree for cover. Halfborn threw himself into a group of 20 guys who were following us. He destroyed them all. He came up laughing, an insane light in his eyes. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, and a dagger stuck out of his chest right over his heart. How is he not dead yet? I asked. He's a berserker. Mallory glanced back, her expression a mix of disdain and exasperation and something else. Admiration? That idiot will keep fighting until he is literally hacked to pieces. Something clicked in my head. Mallory liked Halfborn. You don't call somebody an idiot that many times unless you're really into them. Under different circumstances, I might have teased her, but while she was distracted, there was a wet thwack. An arrow sprouted from her neck. She scowled at me as if to say, "Totally your fault." She collapsed. I knelt at her side, putting my hand on her neck. I could feel the life seeping out of her. I could sense the severed artery, the fading heartbeat, all the damage that had to be mended. My fingers seemed to grow warmer. If I had a little more time... Look out! Shouted X. I raised my shield. A sword clanged against it. I pushed back, knocking the attacker down. My arms ached. My head was throbbing, but somehow I got to my feet. Halfborn was 40 yards away, surrounded by a mob of warriors, all jabbing him with spears, shooting him full of arrows. Somehow he kept fighting, but even he wouldn't be able to stand much longer. X ripped the guy's AK-47 out of his hands and smacked him over the head with it. "Go, Magnus Beantown," said the half-troll. "Take the crest for floor 19. "My nickname will not be Beantown," I muttered. "I refuse." I stumbled uphill until I reached the summit, put my back against a big oak tree while X smashed and backhanded and headbutted Vikings into oblivion. An arrow hit my shoulder, pinning me to the tree. The pain almost made me black out, but I snapped the shaft and pulled myself free. The bleeding stopped instantly. I felt the wound closing as if somebody had filled it with hot wax. A shadow passed over me, something large and dark hurtling from the sky. Took me a millisecond to realize it was a boulder, probably shot from a balcony catapult. Took me another millisecond to realize where it would land. Too late. Before I could shout a warning to X, the half-troll and a dozen other Einherjar disappeared under a 20-ton chunk of limestone, the side of which was painted with love from floor 63. 100 warriors stared at the rock. Leaves and broken twigs fluttered around them. Then the Einarhar all turned toward me. Another arrow hit me in the chest. I screamed, more enraged than in pain, and pulled it out. Wow, one of the Vikings commented. He's a fast healer. Try a spear, someone suggested. Try 2 spears. They spoke as if I wasn't worth addressing, as if I were a cornered animal they could experiment with. 20 or 30 Einarhar raised their weapons. The anger inside me exploded. I shouted, expelling energy like a shockwave from a bomb. Bowstrings snapped. Swords fell out of their owners' hands. Spears and guns and axes went flying into the trees. As quickly as it started, the surge of power shut off. All around me, 100 Einarhar had been stripped of their weapons. The blue-painted guy stood in the front row, his baseball bat at his feet. He stared at me in shock. What just happened? The warrior next to him had an eye patch and red leather armor decorated with silver curlicues. Cautiously, he crouched in his seat and retrieved his fallen axe. Alfsadir, said Eye Patch. Nicely done, son of Frey. Haven't seen a trick like that in centuries, but bone steel is better. My eyes crossed as his axe blade spun toward my face. Then everything went dark. Alright guys, that's chapter 14 through 19 of Magnus Chase, The Sword of Summer. I hope I didn't accidentally call it the Red Pyramid at the very beginning. So used to saying that because I did just get done about 2 months ago with my Red Pyramid thing. And I've still got that kind of stuck in my head a little bit, so it's kind of hard to get out. We are 56 minutes into this video, so I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, be sure to like, be sure to comment, and be sure to subscribe. There are more amazing audiobooks coming your way, and you don't want to miss them. Have a nice day, guys, and peace out.